I want to ask 2 questions. Number one, it seems as if you have a lot going on. I know you have an 1,800 member church, and the Nigeria population now is about, Lagos population where your church is about 20...
Well, 18 million.
18 million.
Yeah, we're not sure the statistics is not
yes.
accurate.
I have 2 questions. First one is, how do you, with all these things that you're doing, all these initiatives, how do you plan to measure the impact on the society or various aspects of the society, so that you know whether you're actually making a dent or making an impact? Second thing is, there's always this thing about the balance between faith and works. If you read the beginning of the New Testament, the Gospel, Jesus Christ, people talk about the red letters, and if you see, Jesus was actually emphasizing what we do for the society, how we help the poor, how we help those who are in need. But then when you get to Paul emphasizes grace and faith, and having faith in God and having grace to be able to function. But when you go back to James emphasizes again works. He says, show me your faith by your works. But the challenge always for me is, how do you balance this? Because we don't want people to come in and then they just begin to work for the church, but they don't really have a lot of relationship with Jesus, and the love of God is not what is motivating what they do. It's just the fact that they know that, this is what I'm doing. Pastor, this is what I can do. I can do this, I can do that. I used to do this for my company. I used to do this for this person. And then after a while, because they don't have that labor of love being poured in them by the Spirit of God, they get frustrated after a season, and then they begin to get burnt out. So how do we intend to balance that area of faith and works to the point that people have a balance in the way they do both?
Very, very good question. First of all, it's not every single member of the church that's involved in every single initiative. As a matter of fact, I'm probably the one who is right there at the center, coordinating most of these things. What we've been able to do is to try and identify people and their passion and push them towards their passion. So we have little groups dealing with everything. Of course, as in most places, there are 1 or 2 people who are involved in more than one thing because they can multitask. But we try as much as possible to ensure that you are focusing on your area of passion. I forgot to mention that we're also starting a soccer team, and there's a whole bunch of people who that is their passion. But what we also do in the church is that there's a process. You don't come into church and then before we know it, we have pushed you somewhere. No. You come into church and we go through a school of discipleship of some sort for a session. It is actually that process that we tend to identify your gifting, your talent, your passion, your area of interest. Okay, so we are hoping that in that process you are grounded at least to some extent. Now, of course, to all those things, there are 1 or 2 exceptions. 1 or 2 people come and very quickly they show their enthusiasm or whatever. But generally, there is this process of going through some kind of discipleship before you are now exposed to this kind of work. But the most important thing is that we watch carefully and make sure that there is a balance.
Yes.
That you are not overdoing anything. Because most of these people also are either professionals, business people, working one place or the other. And they also have home and family to take care of. Yes. So we watch carefully to ensure that there is a balance and people don't get carried away working for God and thinking that that is a relationship with God. Yes. We try and make sure everybody tries to do what they need to do and not to over-labor or overwork any of our people. So there's also liberty and freedom. It's good for people to be happy in the environment of God. Yes. Discipline, no doubt, but then happiness and freedom of expression without intimidation or fear. So there's a direct connection with a lot of the ministers and, of course, with me as the head pastor.
How do you want to measure how much impact each of these initiatives is having over the area of influence that you're sending them to?
The measurement of the impact.
Yes.
Okay. Lagos is a big city. There's 15 to 18 million people in Lagos. It might not be possible for us, of course, it's impossible for us to affect the whole of Lagos. But we believe that if everybody lights a little fire, very soon the whole place will be ablaze. Our impact is very easy to measure. In heritage homes, we've been able to deal with about 60 children, about 40 of whom we have found other homes for in the last 4 or 5 years. We have an average of about 30 children in the home all the time. About 50% of them cannot be adopted or adoptable because they are under care for one reason or the other. So we do know that somehow we've at least been able to rescue about 40 children, okay, who would not have been rescued if we had not come on the scene. Courage Education Foundation, we have about 120 children who have been given the privilege of education, which they would probably not have received if we hadn't stepped in. One of them, a young girl, was the daughter of a Megad. A Megad is a local guard, very poor. They live below sustenance. Typically, those sort of people don't even go to school, especially when it's female, because there's still that attitude. But, I mean, it brought tears to my eyes when she now goes to one of the best secondary schools in Nigeria, and she now wants to be a doctor. And you need to hear her speak English, very sound, very impeccable. That's an impact. Who knows what she's going to be tomorrow? Also, our education intervention is not just a blind intervention, you know. We started off buying chalk, building buildings, renovating toilets and all that. And then we began to do research. And we found that it's okay to do infrastructure, but the critical thing is teachers. Teachers are not well motivated, they're not well trained, they're not capable of delivering. So we found that it's even possible to teach people under a tree if you have a good teacher. So our emphasis now is on teaching, motivating the teachers, changing their mindset, starting a teacher training institute, and so on and so forth, and then doing public awareness and lifting up the profile of the teacher so that they are proud in what they do. And then we'll then dovetail and do infrastructure, and so on and so forth. So that's what we try and do in all aspects.